Unsolved.
The Zodiac Killer case. Sick of living, unwilling to die. So the first crime associated with the Zodiac Killer was the murder of David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen near Lake Herman. They pulled off on a turnout which had a gate which led to the pump station for this lake here. And the Zodiac pulled up next to him, got him out of their car, shot David in the back of the head, and then shot Betty 5 times in the back. The next crime happened about 6 months later at Blue Rock Springs, only a few miles west of Lake Herman, where the Zodiac Killer shot and almost killed Mike and shot and killed Darlene Ferrin while they were sitting in her car. The next crime happened about 3 months later, about 30 miles north of those two crimes, where the Zodiac tied up at gunpoint Brian and Cecilia, and then he stabbed both of them, where Brian was gravely injured and survived, and Cecilia died 2 days after the event. Now, the final known crime of the Zodiac Killer happened about 2 weeks later in San Francisco, where he shot taxi driver Paul Stein in the back of the head near the San Francisco Presidio. Now, all of the crimes happened at night in the dark, except for the Lake Berryessa stabbing, which was just an hour or so before dark. Now, the detail that makes these things so notorious are that the Zodiac Killer was mailing the newspaper taunting letters and confessing that he killed these people. And on 2 occasions, he called the police after he murdered the victims and directing them to the crime scene. Now, the question is, did the Zodiac act earlier in Southern California in 1966? And so this is my little reenactment of that crime.
Would you like some help?
My VW Beetle just won't start.
My car is down the street. I can give you a ride home.
Oh, thank you. I need a ride so my father won't get worried about me.
It's about time.
About time for what?
For you to die.
So the focus of this video is to compare the murder of Cheri Jo Bates with the murders in San Francisco Bay Area and see if it was the work of the Zodiac Killer. So I'm going to present 5 or 6 similarities to the Zodiac killings with the Cheri Jo Bates murder that happened 2 years prior to the San Francisco Bay Area murders. After the murder of Cheri Jo Bates, the killer mailed to the police and the newspaper 4 weeks after the crime a carbon copy of a typed letter called the confession. And as we know, the Zodiac, 4 weeks after the murder of Darlene Ferrin, mailed a handwritten letter to 3 newspapers. So is it possible that the Zodiac acted anew and decided against bothering with typing his letters and just handwriting them, and instead of calling it the confession, changed it to "This is the Zodiac speaking," and made other changes? So here's a look, side by side, of the letter in the Cheri Jo Bates murder and one of the letters from the Zodiac murders. In the Riverside one, it says, "Squirmed and shook as I choked her, and her lips twitched. She let out a scream." And it spells twitched, Twiched. And then the Zodiac letter, it says, "And watch them scream and twitch and squirm." And it spells twitch, Twich. And in both cases, that word is misspelled. Is that evidence that it's the same person? Also in the confession letter, it says, "I shall do this." And in the Zodiac's letter, it says several times, "I shall do this. I shall do that." Is that evidence it's the same person? Now there's also this word choked in the confession letter, and it being misspelled with a Choaked. And I think the Zodiac made that mistake in one of his letters, but I haven't been able to find it. Maybe you've seen it. Now, looking at the envelopes, the Riverside one is in all capital letters and states "Attention Crime." And then the San Francisco Chronicle one says, "Please rush to the editor." So could he have made that change? And is it possible the handwriting is done by the same person? Because it doesn't look the same. For example, this envelope, the handwriting from the Zodiac, doesn't look like the other handwriting from the Zodiac letters, envelopes. So his handwriting varies greatly between different envelopes. But one thing they all have in common is they don't have the street address for the business that they're mailing the letter to. And of course you have that the Zodiac claims to have been the one that killed Cheri Jo Bates in this very letter here. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and the next episode was going to be about the suspects that I mentioned last week. However, I think I found out who killed Cheri Jo Bates. And so next week's episode will be about that person.